Welcome to a Sunny Side Up Life podcast, a show for the woman who is ready to live an abundant life full of freedom and positivity. I'm Sami Womack, and I'm on a mission to help you break free from survival mode, gain financial freedom, stay motivated, and focus on what matters most. Join the movement and let's start living on the brighter side of life together. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to talk to you about how I organize my bank accounts. So, this has been something that has been a total game changer for our family and a game changer for a lot of my budget coaching students, a lot of students in my budgeting course. So I have to share it with you guys because if you are not organizing your bank accounts like this, you are missing out, because I really feel like this is one of the key ingredients of our financial success. So I am really excited to share this with you, and I want to kind of just break it down for you guys. So before we really dig into exactly how I organize my bank accounts, I want to just share this little side tip, a little disclaimer with you. Okay, so there is always in the budgeting world an ongoing debate between using the cash system, using debit cards, and some people even use credit cards responsibly. So there are, personal preferences, I feel like. That's what I feel like it is, a personal preference. So what I'm sharing with you today is what I personally use, which is the debit card system. We're very debit card people. However, don't turn off your ears if you are a cash user, because the techniques that I'm about to break down for you can be applied to the cash system as well. So, there's really not much difference between the cash system or debit card system. It's basically just about the organization of your money. The only really difference is where you physically store your money, and you can still organize your money the exact same way. So whether it is physically in cash or in your bank account and you use a debit card, it doesn't matter. You can still organize your money the exact same way. So just a little disclaimer before we go into this. All right, so I technically have 3 bank accounts, and my fourth place that I keep money is we do keep a little bit of cash at home. We keep a lot less now than we used to. When we very first started our journey, we kept our original $1,000 starter emergency fund completely in cash, just because it just gave us a security of having that cash on hand, and just something about knowing that we could physically get our hands on our emergency fund at any moment really gave us a lot of peace of mind. So now we keep, I don't know, a couple $100s. It kind of varies. So we're not as big about keeping cash at home as we used to be. But we do still do that a little bit. But we have 3 main bank accounts. The first one is a bills account with a debit card and checks attached to it. And the second is a spending account with a debit card. And we actually just recently decided to go ahead and order some checks for it, there's been some things where we've needed checks and we haven't had checks for that account. So we have a debit card and checks for our spending account as well now. And we just keep one savings account. And we'll talk about savings accounts a little bit more in a minute, but we keep one savings account. So the way that we kind of do the flow of our money, the way that our money flows through all of these bank accounts is our paycheck, my husband's paycheck, is direct deposited straight into our bills account. And I always feel like you have to pay your bills first. So that's what we do. We pay our bills first, and we leave just enough in the bills account to pay our bills for that pay period, which means from now until the next paycheck, just enough, plus a $10 buffer for when everything comes out You don't want to see your bank account at zero. I hate to see my bank account at zero. So I leave $10. It's a nice, even amount. The math is really easy to keep up with. So you can do your buffer at whatever you feel comfortable. Some people feel more comfortable at $100. Some people don't want a buffer at all. It's kind of a personal preference, but we do a $10 buffer. So in our bills account, we leave just enough to pay the bills for that pay period plus a $10 buffer. Then we transfer, and if all your bank accounts are connected, you can easily do this on your online banking. We transfer over into our spending account only our spending allowance for that current pay period, which we can dig into a little bit more in a minute. And then whatever is left over, hopefully there will be money left over. If not, you'll need to go back and, cut your spending back or get rid of a bill, cut your cell phone plan back or something like that. But whatever is left over either goes straight into your savings account or goes straight to paying debt, whatever you're working on. So for us now, it goes straight into our savings account. And then I keep our savings account broken down on paper even farther into what's our emergency fund, what is our sinking fund, and what is our next goal fund. And we're going to talk more about all of those. But if you're needing help organizing all of this, if this is like way over your head, if you're like, wouldn't even know where to get started with organizing that. I do have my worksheets that I personally use and are a product on my website that I will link to in the show notes. So if you're not familiar with them, they are a great resource. There are 14 worksheets. You can print them and handwrite them like I do, or you can use them digitally on Google Sheets. And if you use them on Google Sheets, you can actually get the free app on your phone and you can share them with your partner in real time. So you can both have the app on your phone and you can both update them in real time and both kind of keep track of things. So that's really helpful if you decide to do them digitally. So I'll link to that in the show notes if you're not familiar with my worksheets. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the breakdown of the accounts. And I kind of want to dig into each of the different kinds of accounts. So first of all, the bills account, which I feel like is basically the most important bank account. And this is kind of where I start on payday. Our money goes straight into the bills account. And like I said, we do direct deposit, but it'll work exactly the same if you do a manual deposit, if you get a physical check and you go and deposit it yourself. So start with the money in this account, because I think that it's most important to make sure that all of your bills are paid, because you can always kind of go back and scrimp on groceries. You can always kind of do a pantry challenge if your grocery budget comes up a little short. You can raid your deep freeze, whatever you need to do. You cannot pay extra on your debt. You cannot save anything, but I feel like you have to pay your bills first, right? So I always do that first. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. And this is assuming that you'll have enough for basic food needs, of course. Obviously, make sure you have enough for at least your basic food. But in this account, your bills account consists of things like your house payment or your rent, your electricity, your water, your phone, your internet, TV, any kind of monthly memberships, maybe a gym membership, Netflix, Audible, Amazon Prime, Hulu, things like that. Any kind of debt payments, a car payment, a credit card payment, any kind of other minimum debt payments would all go in your bills account. So I add up exactly to the penny how much I need to pay for all the bills that are due within the pay period, and I leave exactly that amount in my account plus a $10 buffer, just so I don't have to see my bank account at zero, and it makes it really easy math. So once I leave just enough for the bills plus $10, that is all that is allowed to stay in that account. And then I transfer over my spending allowance for the pay period into the spending account, and then anything left over after that goes into our savings account, or you would go take that money and pay it towards debt. The thing I love most about doing this is that it gives you that reassurance that your bills are paid no matter what. So if you have a lot of automatic payments, I feel like a lot of us do now in this digital age, we have a lot of automatic payments. It gives you that reassurance that you know when that payment comes out automatically, there will be enough money in there. And that's the kind of stuff that's going to help you sleep at night. That's the kind of stuff that is going to give you financial peace, as they say. You know that money is there, and that when the payment clears, you won't have to wonder about it. You won't have to really keep up with what's still pending, what's cleared, and all that kind of stuff. So it is a huge game changer and a huge peace of mind. So next, let's talk about the spending account. And after I've made sure that all the bills are paid, I transfer over only what I'm allowed to spend for the current pay period. And of course, if you're doing the cash system, you would physically just go and withdraw the cash from the bank. And then you'd break it down into your envelopes. And it's essentially the same thing. It's just where you store your money would be different. So I feel like a lot of people, even people who do the cash system, most of the time still have a bank account to pay their bills just because of online payments and using checks and things like that. And a lot of people that do the cash system use the cash system only for their spending money in most cases. Some people do 100% cash, which I'm not sure how you would do that with all of the digital payments and stuff these days. But if you do your spending money in cash, you would go and just physically pull it out of the bank at this time instead of transferring it. So it's the same thing essentially. So in your spending account, you would include things like groceries, gas or fuel for your car, whatever you call it. Different people call it different things. Your extra money, things for clothing, date nights, fun money, restaurants, any kind of things like that. Any kind of thing that varies, that you have control over how much you spend on it. That is the spending money. So I transfer over into this account only what I'm allowed to spend until the next payday. And then when it's gone, it's gone. So this is, where that discipline comes in. And this is where you want to make a plan for that money. So if, for example, you have $500, you want to ask yourself, how exactly do I want to spend that $500? How much do I need to spend for groceries? How much do I need for gas money? How much do I want for fun money? And then I plan all that out on my budgeting worksheet. So you can handwrite that. You can do it digitally. There are different apps that you can use if that works for you. But be realistic when you do this and realize that if you're only allowing yourself $100 for a family of 5 for a whole month, that probably isn't going to cut it. So when you're doing this, be realistic to your real needs. While also challenging yourself. So it is a hard balance, and I think that's a balance that a lot of us struggle with in the first few months of budgeting. But it is a trial and error kind of process. And it is something that I can't give you a cut and dry answer of what is right for your family. But I feel like it is a balance somewhere in between, being realistic of what you really need and challenging yourself. So kind of keep that in mind as you're setting up your spending budget, especially if you're just getting started. But keep in mind that you have goals that you're trying to accomplish and that you don't want to just wildly spend all of your money. You want to make sure that, you do have some fun money, but that just so you don't go insane, which we could talk about on another episode because I get that question a lot. But make sure, you have a little bit of something for your sanity, but also make sure that you are leaving enough to save or to apply towards debt because you do want to make some progress towards your future goals. So kind of keep that in mind and work on that balance as you're getting started and trial and error as you go. Because like I said, there is no cut and dry right answer for what your spending allowance really should be. So I leave all of my spending money together in this one bank account. And then I just break down those categories, gas, groceries, fun money, etc., farther onto my worksheets. I handwrite it. And this is really me telling myself how I'm allowed to spend my money in each of these categories. And if you do cash, you would pull your cash out and then you could break it down into different envelopes, into a groceries envelope, into a fun money envelope, into a clothing allowance envelope, whatever you want to do. And I've even heard of some people with debit cards going an extra step farther and actually having separate debit card accounts. They have only a groceries debit card or only a fun money debit card. Or some spouses they'll have like a family spending money where they spend for like groceries and gas and things like that or whatever. And then they'll have their own separate spending accounts where it's kind of like their fun money, their play money, and they'll keep those separate. So I feel like that's whatever works for you. But what I really love about having a separate spending account is that I know for sure what I'm allowed to spend until the next payday. There's no question. I can easily log on to my bank account, or if you're doing cash, you can easily open your envelopes and see how much money you have left. And it's, it gives me that reassurance of what I still have left. And even if it's a low amount, I know for sure, that things will be tight. I don't have to wonder. I don't have to guess. And if it's a high amount, I know how much fun I'm allowed to have, guilt-free. And I also don't have to wonder if I'm going to accidentally spend my bills money at the grocery store. You don't have to wonder, is my electric bill still pending? Am I going to accidentally spend this money at the grocery store that was meant for bills? This allows me to spend in every single category completely guilt-free because I know for sure what is spending money. All right, now let's talk about the savings account. So like I mentioned before, we just have one savings account that we break down even farther onto our handwritten worksheet. And I'll say on that worksheet how much is allotted for each category, like emergency fund, sinking fund, and our next goal fund, which we'll dig into in just a minute. But also remember that you can do this with cash as well. You can also have multiple savings accounts in the bank, whatever works for you. Again, trial and error. If you feel better having some cash savings on hand, some people feel more secure that way. Other people would rather have it in the bank so they aren't tempted to dig into it. Whatever works for you. Trial and error that as well. And some people would prefer to have multiple savings accounts and keep that money separate. Have a separate savings account for their emergency fund and a separate savings account for all their other types of savings. So remember, just a little tip for success here, to pay your bills first, then allow a realistic but challenging amount of spending money. And then if anything is left over, everything that is left over goes straight into savings or paying off debt, depending on where you are in your journey. And this means that you don't wait until a week or two into the pay period to put money into savings. Do it on payday, okay? Do it on payday because that money will disappear. It will disappear. I'm speaking from experience here. And I know that sometimes people will say, they don't have anything left over to put into savings. And this is where you'll want to challenge yourself, work backwards, ask yourself where you can lower your spending, where you can cut back your bills and things like that to be able to save more. Okay, so let's dig into these different kinds of savings account categories. So first of all, emergency fund. And this emergency fund is just to act as a buffer between you and resorting to going more into debt, using a credit card or any kind of other form of debt in case of an emergency. And this will happen. Life will happen. That's just how life works. Emergencies will happen. And no one is immune to them. So having this emergency fund will have you fully prepared. So first of all, before you pay off your debt, you want to have a small beginner emergency fund. And this really varies for different people. So 500 to 1,000, sometimes people even do 2,000. It just really depends. It depends on your income level. It depends on if you're a dual income family or not. If you have only one income, you might want to have a little higher of an emergency fund, because if that person was to get hurt or to lose their job for some reason, you wouldn't have a second income to back you up. Or if your income level is much higher and you're used to, you have a higher cost of living, obviously you might want to bump up your emergency fund a little bit more, because if you were, to go without work or something like that, it would be a little more expensive. So this, again, a personal preference, whatever kind of feels comfortable for you. If you're a single person, you're not married, you don't have any kids, no one else is depending on you, the $500 might be enough to get you through a little small emergency. Again, and remember that this is a beginner emergency fund. So this isn't forever. This is just a little buffer between you and whatever life throws at you. Then after you get your debt paid off, except for your home, of course, because that's going to take you a really long time in most cases, then you can bump up your emergency fund to, most people will say, between 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. I think we kind of did, ours is more like a 5-month emergency fund, just because it came out to a really nice round number, and we were kind of like, that sounds good. So what makes you feel comfortable for your larger emergency fund? So the second kind of savings account is a sinking fund. And a lot of people overlook this part. This is the account that is sometimes completely skipped. And this is a real game changer for people. This is for those non-regular expenses that always seem to sneak up on you. And it seems like the more kids you have, the older your kids get, things like that. There are more and more of these non-regular expenses that sneak up on you. And this can totally ruin a otherwise well-designed budget. And you don't want that to happen to you. So some things that you want to include in your sinking fund would be things like holidays or birthdays, vacations, if you take regular vacations, or if you want to go ahead and start planning for a vacation, home and vehicle maintenance, vehicle registrations or licenses that could be job related. If you work at a job where you have to renew your license every year, every 2 years, things like that. Clothes, we shop seasonally for our clothes. We buy 2 big groups of clothes every year. We do a spring summer wardrobe, and then we do a fall winter wardrobe. So we do that. Some people do like a monthly clothing allowance, so you could throw that into your sinking fund if you needed to, however you do your clothing budgets. Also things like taxes, if you pay your own income tax, if you pay property taxes, any kind of other taxes like that, that could go in your sinking fund. Any kind of irregular bills that you only pay quarterly or annually. For us, my husband is a union worker. His company is with a union, so we pay union dues every quarter. So that goes into our sinking fund. So just kind of a little to help you get started. If you can't just sit down and name all of your sinking funds off the top of your head, don't worry. You're probably going to miss a couple if you try to do this. So this is something that will definitely be better the second year that you do it. So don't worry. If you feel like I can't remember everything, you're not alone. What I did was I kept a running list the first year, and as something unexpected or unbudgeted came up, I would just go and put it on the list, and then it grew. So we just kind of started with the basic things like Christmas and birthdays, and then the list kind of grew from there. We were like, oh, we have to do our vehicle registration. We should probably put that in our budget, and I added it to the list. So don't stress over this. Just keep a running list. As something comes up that you wish you would have had money set aside for, add it to your list. It's that simple. And like I said, it won't be perfect your first year, but your second year, you should be really on top of this kind of stuff. So it's a learning curve, and it's something that you'll grow into. But then what you'll want to do is you want to add up your whole year worth of sinking expenses, and then you want to divide it by how often you want to contribute to it. So you can simply add to this fund little by little, maybe every single paycheck, maybe every month, whatever makes sense to you. And that's going to really help you be on top of these irregular kind of bills. The main goal here is just to contribute to it throughout the year so these expenses don't sneak up on you and totally ruin a good budgeting month. So the next kind of savings account is a next goal fund, and this is the fun part of savings. This is where you want to consult your goals list and actually start saving for things. So of course, if these are non-needed things, you'll want to wait to buy them, to buy anything too crazy until after you're out of debt and you've established your emergency fund and things are, kind of looking better. But, this is where, if your car is on its last leg and you need a new one, this is how you save up and you pay cash for all of these large ticket items. So you're actually taking steps to do it. This is where you're actually setting aside an account or setting it aside on your worksheet and taking steps. Maybe you're setting aside a separate cash envelope system, however you do it, to hold yourself accountable and figure out what works best for you. But this is where you really put the pen to paper and make those goals come to life with this next goal fund and keeping that money separate. So a little side tip for success here: if you don't already have a goals list, I want to encourage you to make one. Write out your goals with a money amount next to them. Figure out when you want to accomplish that goal. Do the math. Figure out how much you'll need to contribute from each pay period to make that happen, and then start contributing to that fund to make it actually happen. Even if that's just your emergency fund, how long will it take you to get that emergency fund saved up and things like that. So this is how real people save up, pay cash for large ticket items, actually get their emergency funds established, things like that. They write out their goals. They write out a goal sheet. And they're very practical on the amount of money. They give themselves a date of when they want to accomplish it. And then they have a place for it in their savings account. And that's exactly how we did it. And I want to encourage you to do the same. So if you don't already have a goals list, this is your call to action to create a goals list. So I want to give you a quick recap real quick of the flow chart of our money. And again, I can put all of this in the show notes for you guys, so you can kind of visually see it. But our paychecks get direct deposited straight into our bills account. We leave just enough in the bills account to pay the bills for that budget period, plus our $10 buffer. Transfer over only our spending allowance for that pay period into our spending account. Whatever is left over would go either to your savings account or to paying extra on your debt. And then your savings account would be broken down even farther into your emergency fund, your sinking fund, and your next goal fund. So the key here, like I always say, is to do what feels right for your family. And I hope that this kind of helps you get a better idea of how I organize my bank account. And I hope that it inspires you to figure out the best way to organize your bank accounts or your cash systems, whatever works for you, in a way that will really make sense and help you achieve your goals. So leave me some reviews, you guys. Let me know what you thought about this episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, share with your friends. That's how this little podcast is going to grow. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today for this kind of long episode. And I will talk to you guys next time.